You ever find that perfect sample, but as soon as you try turning it into a full beat, you hit a wall? It's hard figuring out what else your beat needs when you use a sample, but once you know what role your sample is playing, you'll be able to sample anything and still make a full beat out of it. So if you want to start making more finished beats, I'm going to share my simple 4-role framework that will give you the power to sample anything and still make a complete beat out of it. My name is Navie. I've been making sampled beats for over 15 years, some of which have been used by platinum artists and have gotten millions of streams. So let's talk about how to use this sampling framework. Every sample you use can fill one of 4 key roles for your beat. And by using this approach, it will become easy to know exactly what your sample is doing, but more importantly, what else your beat needs to become an actual full beat. So let's break down these roles one by one. One role that a sample can play is to be your beat's star. This is when your sample is the main idea or sound that makes the beat special, that helps the beat stand out. It's what everyone pays attention to and remembers about your beat. So here's an example of a star sample. Take a listen to this sample here.
I must relax you, I mean totally relax you.
This is a Barry White sample that was famously used for 50 Cent's 21 Questions.
Would you love me if I was down and out? Would you still have love for me?
When you listen to this beat, the sample is what catches your attention. The entire beat would sound plain and boring if the sample was not in the beat, and it's just what makes the beat special. So that's one type of role your sample can play. But this leads me to the next role. Not every sample should be used to catch your listener's attention. There are some samples that instead are more helpful to get your beat to feel more complete and more full. And here's an example of a sample like this. Here we have this Lobby Cipher sample.
And I wonder if you know what it means.
Which was used in Kanye West's I Wonder.
My whole life.
In this beat, you could say the bright synth is the star. It's the sound in this beat that catches your attention, and it's probably what everyone hums along to when they hear this song. But the sample is still important. It has a supporting role in this beat. It's what makes it actually sound full. If the sample didn't exist, there would still be some cool, unique ideas in this beat, but the beat would probably just sound incomplete. So that's the second type of role a sample can play, to be the supporting role for your beat. The third type of role creates a sense of pacing for your beat. It directs what the tempo is and establishes a rhythm. But to put it more plainly, it's the drums. And there are plenty of examples of these types of samples used throughout history. Like the drums from this Queen song here. Used for Jay Dilla's Make 'Em Envy. This role is simple to understand. Without drums in a beat, it can be hard to guide your listener and getting them to understand what the pace of the beat is. And so this is the third type of role a sample can play in your beat, to be the director. Now, before we talk about the last role, there's an important idea I want to point out first. A sample isn't limited to just playing one role. There are plenty of examples of some samples playing multiple roles all at once. For example, we have this sample from the Charmels. As you can hear, this sample is able to play multiple roles for a beat, which is exactly how the RZA used it for Cream.
The combination made my eyes bleed. No question, I will flow off and try to get the dough off. Sticking up right, boys on board.
Now, in case this is starting to feel a bit hard to understand, I'm going to walk through some examples of how to use this framework to make full beats from scratch using samples. But before we do that, let's cover the last role. So what is this mysterious final role? Well, the same way when you watch a movie or a play, what's happening in the background can add more detail or set a mood for everything else that's happening. And a sample can be used in the exact same way. These types of samples are specifically used to introduce personality and add more richness into the beat. For example, when you listen to the sample here from SD Burman, you can hear this gets used as a background detail for Put You On The Game, produced by Timbaland. By no means would this beat sound boring or incomplete or aimless without this sample, but it definitely does add some character. So those are the 4 roles a sample can play in your beat. the star, the support, the director, or the background extra. And to make this easier to understand, let's use this framework to make a couple of beats from scratch. Let's start by taking this random sample here. When we listen through this sample, we can hear that this has the ability to play multiple roles in the beat if we wanted it to, like if we use this piece here. This has tons going on and could be used to play more than one role. But let's say I chose to use a different section of the sample, this one here. See if you can tell which role this should play. Now to me, this would work great as the star of our beat. It's a guitar playing this melodic idea, but the idea stands out to me. It has this unique feel because of how the guitar is being played and how much emotion this creates for me personally. If I heard this in a beat, it would immediately catch my attention. So let's use this as our star. By the way, if chopping up samples is something that you struggle with, I do have an entire video showing you a framework for this, which I will link at the end of this video. But as you can hear with this sample, there's still a lot that it doesn't provide. So this is when we move on to filling the remaining roles ourselves. So one role our beat definitely needs is some support. You could use more samples to fill each of these remaining roles if you'd like, or you can just do this yourself using VSTs. For this beat, I can grab this Fender Rhodes here, and I can use this for the supporting role in my beat. Now obviously when you do this, you don't want your supporting sound to do whatever it wants. It's there to support and follow what your star is doing. So to do that, let me start by seeing what notes are actually in this guitar sample. And to get this support to actually work with the sample, I'm going to use this like a blueprint to draw in some chords that follow what the sample is actually doing. So for the first bar here, we have this A note up here. Over here we have this E, so let's use this for our chord as well. And down here we have this A sharp. Then for the next bar, I want to use some different notes since I'm building a different chord. So we have this D here. I'll use this E again, but maybe I'll switch this for something else later on. And then down here we have a different note that I haven't used, this A sharp. So let's hear how this sounds. Alright, cool. So this works perfectly with my star sample, and I want to say, as you can hear, this pattern isn't blowing your socks off, it isn't catching your attention, but that's fine because it's not meant to, it's not the star. I'm simply adding this into my beat to get it to sound more full and support what the star is doing. So let's drag this into our Fender Rhodes and listen to how this sounds. Alright, I think this is sitting in the wrong frequency zone. We don't need it to sit this close to the guitar and be as bright as the star is. So let's push this down an octave and reduce its color. Alright, that just fits better. Just a quick side tip here, often, but not always, the supporting sounds in your beat will sit at a lower frequency zone than your main star. From here, I think getting these chords to strum would sound more pleasant. Alright, I think this E might sound better if it was at a lower octave. And I'll also take the root notes and copy and paste them at a lower octave as well, so this fills up even more space in these lower frequencies. Alright, this beat is now actually sounding more full, and it's all thanks to this supporting sound. Now, before I add more, it would be wise to bring in some direction to create some pacing for this beat. And that way I'll have a better sense of where to place my remaining sounds going forward as well. So let's add in some drums. Now let's see if we can add a little bit more uniqueness and personality into this beat by filling in that background role. So here I will grab yet another random sample. As you can hear, it's full of these wacky, bizarre textures, making it easy to imagine this working in a background role. So let's bring this into the beat. I want to point out, I cut a lot of frequencies by using an EQ and added a lot of reverb and delay to get this sound to actually sit in the background. But even still, after doing this manipulation, this doesn't really feel like it fits in the beat, and you can hear it's pretty off key. So let's see exactly what's happening inside of the sample to fix this. You can see here the sample is playing at a G sharp. And when we compare this to our main star sample and look at the notes in there, there is not a G sharp in this sample at all. And the same is true for our support pattern, which could explain why this sample doesn't feel like it fits in. So let's repitch the sample to get it to fit. When looking at our pattern that we did build for our support, the root note here was an A sharp. So let's repitch this sample to this note. We will do this by bringing this down a bunch of semitones. So now it's playing at a C sharp, so a few more semitones down should do it. All right, now it is at an A sharp. So when we play this alongside our other layers in the beat, it works perfectly. I think the last supporting sound this beat is still missing is a bass line, and so once we bring that in, we have ourselves a full beat. A pretty simple, straightforward example. Let's do one that's slightly more challenging next. Let's say, for example, I start with a sample like this. Now, when we listen through what's happening in this sample, tell me what role you think this part of the sample should play. Now to me, this sounds like a combination of roles. Most primarily it is the support, but there's a little bit of director being played here. It's mainly support because we have a pretty standard piano here that doesn't sound particularly unique or attention catching. Plus it's playing some pretty simple chords in a lower frequency zone. And when we listen to the sample, there's also some light bass in it as well. So this feels like it's more suited for a supporting role. And this sample is also somewhat filling the director role since it has a light layer of drums that is creating some sense of pacing. Having said that, it'll probably need a little bit more reinforcement for that role. So at this point, this beat still needs a star, it still needs some background, and probably some more help with direction. So let's start by filling in the star role. Let's do that by grabbing this guitar here. Now, this guitar doesn't sound particularly unique or interesting, which won't make for the best star if we use it as it is. And so this is when using effects can help. Now this sounds more unique. Next, let's build a pattern for this beat. Once again, let me take a look at what is happening in the sample. And I will use this like a blueprint to build a melodic pattern that would work perfectly as the star alongside my supporting sample. Let's try to follow what the sample is doing and build a pattern like this. So let's preview this and hear how it sounds. Let's shift some of these notes over. I'll also add in this extra note in between. So now let's take a listen. Alright, so this sounds like a good starting point. Let's hear how this would actually sound if it was my guitar playing this. So we'll drag this in. A bit too loud, so let's reduce the velocity here. And I think this F sharp here would be better as a different note. So let's see what the next note up is in our sample. Here we do see we have a G sharp in this sample. So let's shift this note up to G sharp and take a listen. I feel like I like this better. I do want to introduce a little more variation into the beat, and I can probably use this guitar to do that. So for example, what if I repeated this pattern for bar 2, but I changed the ending notes? Alright, I think this sounds great. Next, let's fill in the director role by adding some actual full sounding drums. And this time I can fill this role from grabbing yet another sample. I'll use this one here.
Never knew I cared.
So let's throw in these drums alongside some lighter drums of my own for layering purposes and hear how this sounds. Alright, now my beat has a stronger sense of rhythm thanks to the drums directing the beat. And even though the sample is providing some support with the bass line, it just doesn't feel like it's strong enough, so I'll add in my own layer of bass as more support. And now finally, I will fill in the last role, which is the background. I'll grab this sound here. Once again, not really a sound that feels like it fits in the background role. It doesn't have much personality right now, and it feels like it's sitting up front. But this is exactly when effects can help again. Plus some unique pattern ideas like a slide will also help here. So that is the 4-roll framework that you can use to sample anything. But like I mentioned, if chopping up samples is what's getting in your way, click this video next to me. It's one of my best videos that I have on my channel. But if you want to give Note Grabber a try, that plugin that I use throughout all this video, click this other box right next to me. Like and subscribe, and yeah, click one of these little boxes. Be a box clicker, come on.